Hello everyone, my name is Young Falcon, and today we'll be taking a look at Kenna Bridge of Spirits, the brand new action-adventure game that's been hyped up over on the PS5 and PS4, but it also released on the PC through Epic Games. Thank you so much to EMBER Labs for providing a review code, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. So our story goes as followed. We play as Kenna, the spirit guide, who goes through a variety of forces trying to fix the corruption that's been spread due to an unwieldy force, along with helping other spirits on your journey reach the mountain shrine and hopefully fix that up so they can have their spirits laid to rest. The plot for Kenna plays things relatively safe, but that really works out in the game's favor as the simple characters and writing really go a long way to pull out the heartstrings due to how it's presented. The CGI cutscenes are out of this world, and the in-game engine, I mean, you guys clearly can see it when we get to the presentation. It's one of the more gorgeous looking games that we've had on PS5 and PS4. I also very much enjoyed Kenna as a character. She's full of life, very expressive with the Raw and the other characters she interacts with, and I like how just sweet and down to earth the character is. It really works out. As for the side characters and even the villain we face, they're very, very effective, and you could definitely understand everyone's motivations, especially as more backstory gets revealed as you explore throughout the game, picking up various pieces of flashbacks, and as we figure out what caused this town to get corrupted and why everything is going dark. Lastly, the way the story wraps up was definitely satisfying, and it doesn't overstay its welcome with an 8 to 9 hour runtime if you're just gunning for the mainline story, definitely around 12 to 15 if you want to go for all the collectibles and do everything. So not only is the story a fun time to explore, we also have honestly like CGI Disney film levels of great visuals. This game is outstanding. Truly, in my opinion, the best looking game of 2021 for me personally, and I was floored with how the art style, animations, gameplay, and presentation all work in tangent with each other. First things first, it's gotta be the animation, man. Everything is so smooth. You could even see some really nice usage of motion blur and smear framing when you throw your light and heavy attacks around on enemies. There's also a nice kind of squash and stretch to how you attack enemies and the way they recoil and bounce around, and the parry effects with all the particles going everywhere, and even your shield just being this ginormous kind of translucent ball that's a particle effect in of itself. Everything just looks incredible. Using the rot, which are your tiny little friends that help you out throughout the game, all their power-ups feel genuinely devastating, and it's really nice to see these kind of cute little black creatures that are very furry and soft turn into these devastating war machines throughout combat, and that's always kind of a nice little touch to me. I love that aspect of the game. The enemy designs are also really great and also varied, which we'll cover a bit more in the gameplay, but they feel nice. They look really grotesque and kind of creepy, but still have this allure of there's a lost spirit kind of inside of there that you just want to free, and I think that really sells the atmosphere of the game. And the way they combine these corrupt lands that show all the gray patches and life dying out as you try to restore it and the green plains come back. I'm always a sucker for when games do that, and Kenna definitely has that in strides. It looks great. Speaking of locations and corrupt areas, the locales are 10 out of 10. We go from these lush, vibrant forests with all these downed trees, and definitely feels like this is a town long forgotten, whereas you try to use puzzles and things to piece together machinery that hasn't been in use for who knows how many years. And when you do that, you know, you finally get to go back and figure some puzzles out, and that's always a nice time, and it just looks great to pull that off. Later transitioning into harsh cold mountaintops and mine caverns that you're going to go through, and then of course this really outstanding set piece that's like a stormy tall wooden skyscraper of sorts. And man, there's so many sick set pieces about Kenna that really sells the game for me, and it really makes you want to explore every nook and cranny of these locations. Funnily enough, the weirdest part of Kenna for me was the nostalgia that washed over me while playing it, because it really felt like those 6th generation action adventure titles that I kind of grew up with. Overall, I think the presentation, it goes without saying, it's an outstanding game. Definitely what I would call a photo mode title in terms of how many pictures you can take and how many awesome screenshots you can grab to show off to your friends about how gorgeous this game is. And for its low price tag of around $40, it's really outstanding stuff. So if you're in it for just the graphics, art style, and story alone, you're gonna have one really great time. Now, as for the core gameplay, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, to be completely honest with you. When it comes to exploration, I think Kenna does a really good job and knocks it out the park. I do enjoy the platforming aspect. Shimmying around platforms and figuring out where you need to go Uncharted style was always a blast, and I do like the fact that the rot always helps you even in puzzle segments. They help you move blocks and position things around so you can either A, reach higher to reach platforms that you may not be able to grab with your normal jump abilities, or they're just used to place objects where they need to be so you can trigger events like either a main story progression or getting little goodies and extras for upgrades, things like that. You can also deck out the rod and have them all dressed up in cute little hats and put them in nice little costumes, and if you got the digital deluxe version, you could get a golden one. There's all tiny collectibles and everything works in tangent with each other. That's always well and good. All the exploration stuff is fine, it's serviceable. You put stuff where it needs to be, you do a couple of puzzles, and you call it a day. As for combat, I'm a bit split on it, mainly because on one hand, the first half of the game has some outstanding boss fights and a great introduction to the combat system. Off the bat, you're given everything you need to make combat in these types of games really fun. You got your parry out the gate, no need to unlock it, a bow and arrow you unlock pretty early throughout the title, and you're given generous upgrades so you can infuse, say, the rot with your hammer ability, which lets you do either a projectile launch or, if you're up close to an enemy, a double hit, counting as a physical and then a projectile attack. The enemy variety is through the roof, by the way. They got your shielded enemies, your standard grunt spear users, your big hulking brutes with multiple weak points you have to tackle, and sometimes they're going to be with shields, which makes them even harder to take on, and it really puts you to the test of dealing with this type of combat. There's even a couple flying enemies they introduce as you get your bow and arrow, and some enemies that you have to blow up with a bomb because of their hard rock exterior. You never run into a fight and feel like you're fighting the same old because they're always trying to incorporate all the gameplay elements you've learned into each encounter, which I think is pretty swell. So what could be the big deal with Kenna's combat then? Well, I have about 3 gripes with the game. Number 1 is the enemy encounters themselves. Some of them are just a little too unfair, especially the more unique ones. There's a really standout section where you're using these grappling points with your bow and arrow around a treetop, which is really satisfying and fun to move around and outsmart enemies. However, when you're starting out and trying to get the gist of the controls, especially since you just got the bow at this point of the game, you unfortunately have to deal with a move that can blow you off a treetop that you can't really hear or see coming until that purple glow blows you off the treetop. I just wish it was either a little louder or a tiny little arrow indicator telling me exactly where this thing is going to be, kind of similar to the danger indicators that God of War has. That goes doubly for boss battles, as enemies will whack you from behind off screen or you could barely hear them, just the same things we mentioned earlier. This does lead into my second point, which is the rod action usage with the health mechanic. I feel like the way you gather health in this game is a little bit frustrating, I'm not going to lie. So the way the mechanic works is you get to whack on enemies and build up your rod action, which you can either use for combat, offensive abilities, or to defensively heal yourself, basically. And the way healing works is you have to find blue flowers that are sprouted among the battlefield. There might be 1 or 2 depending on what location you're in. Sometimes there's literally the only one, and that lies my frustrations with the combat. There's so much going on at certain points and so little indication of what's happening that you do spend a good chunk of combat, at least earlier in the game before you get your multiple actions, rolling around looking for these tiny blue flowers, trying to heal up and get a couple last bits in before you're just going to get hit by an attack that's going to one-shot you or put you in a last stand state and make it feel very meaningless. So as a player, I'm not really choosing if I should heal now or heal later, because it's always going to be the latter. You're going to reach your last stand state where your screen gets all gray. I'm going to roll over until I can get a blue flower, heal up, and then go back into the fight, build rod action, and use my offensive attacks if I can. I would feel like this mechanic would be a lot better if instead of sacrificing a rod action for a blue flower that could never respawn, we could make it just a little bit easier on the player while still making it difficult, which is having the rod action be used as a self-heal. Maybe you have to go on your shield, heal yourself, and then you sacrifice a rod action to do as such, but you still get to recover some life and go into a fight. Maybe make it a heal over time if you feel like that'll make it more difficult, so we do spend that time kind of waiting and seeing if I should go in and go for the killing blows now as my health has a little bit of a recharge, or if I should keep rolling around and playing defensively, fishing for parries and whatnot. I think that would go a long way in making the combat feel a bit more in the player's hands rather than just a mad scramble to reach a blue flower when I'm at last bits of health, or for the rare occasion just reaching full health only to get smacked around again, because the way enemies deal damage in this game, they hit like a truck, so it doesn't really feel necessary to heal at any other points rather than the last stand state. And finally, and this is the most personal one of them all, I think, it's just the parry timing. I feel like parrying is so strict in this game at certain points. Sometimes I'm hitting consistent parries over and over and over again, you know, flexing on the enemies, and then other times it feels like it just won't really come out, or I can't really find that sweet spot timing for certain attacks. It just felt like I couldn't quite get it down despite how many times I tried. And again, I'm used to this kind of thing. You know, I play Dark Souls and titles of that nature, but there's something about this one in particular where it felt very, very frustrating to pull off the timing. You do just have to sit there and kind of grind these bosses out, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, just something to keep in mind if you're going in there expecting this to be a breeze. So yeah, sorry, those are just some tiny gripes for me that kind of held the game back a bit. Other than that, the combat is still outstanding. There's so many different actions and abilities you get to unlock throughout the course of the game. Finding all the raw and discovering the locations and finding collectibles, etc. It just is really fun to pull off, and I think the traversal and movement mechanics that the game has are all really outstanding. As for the art style, presentation, gameplay, etc., it's 10 out of 10 stuff. And the boss battles, despite my gripes, are still some of the most hype boss battles I've played this year, like for real, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, the music, the syncing, the CGI cutscene that plays beforehand, the storylines that are kind of woven into the combat itself, all of that is like awesome, man. There's so many outstanding moments. Like, my favorite was this boss you have to fight on this wooden skyscraper workshop thing. That was sick, and the music and everything just really solidified that moment as like a top 10 kind of feeling moment for me. Just everything about that really worked. So, despite everything, Kena is still an outstanding game you must play for 2021. I highly recommend it. Truly a contender for Game of the Year 2021, and a game that I cannot recommend enough. It's gorgeous, it plays great, there's so much stuff I loved about it, despite my tiny little gripes that were, again, all player experience. Of course, over time, and as I learn the mechanics and figure more stuff out about the game, it's going to become a lot more fun. Shout out once again to Ember Labs for supplying a review code, and congrats on shipping your very first game from the studio. Looking forward to more projects in the future. And for you guys at home, thank you so much for watching till the end of this video. If you want to follow me on socials, Twitter, Twitch, etc., links will be down below in the description, and of course the card system as you saw throughout the video. Of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and bell so you can be notified when videos go live. And that will do it for me. I wish you all the best. Be safe out there. It's getting crazy still, and I want you guys to take care of yourselves and have a great day. See you guys next time. Peace.